What's happening, Boot Junkies? Mike Delgadio here, back with another video on home studio setup for voiceover. Today, we're going to talk about the new CAD E100SX. This is the latest mic in the famed Equitech, specifically the Equitech 100 line, a line of microphones, heritage that goes all the way back to 1992, if I'm not mistaken, at least for the Equitech line. This microphone line has a 30-year history. That's a pretty good run for a microphone. And when I realized 30 years, that got me thinking. You know, we take for granted all the information that's available on YouTube today. There are so many great reviews for gear, so many great reviewers that you really can get a feel for something way before you buy it. And for me, it's really changed the way I purchase stuff, and maybe it's been the same for you. But if you're old enough to remember the pre-YouTube days, if you wanted to find information about a product that was on the internet before YouTube, man, it was the Wild West. You really had to go looking for reviews of gear if you wanted to know if something was good before you bought it. Now, luckily, if you knew where to look, there were a few places where people in the know could find reviews. And there were some real vanguards out there, way, way ahead of their time. Would have made great YouTubers back in the 90s. I remember back in the 90s finding the Video Exchange Professor on Yahoo and just inhaling all of his stuff. It was cool. He had this sort of thing where he would teach you how to record yourself on videotape so that you could send those tape to your friends. Remember, we had no bandwidth back then. This was dial-up modem. It was videotape. And then they would email you back with comments about your video. It was sort of like a proto-streaming system, if you will. And if you wanted a new camera, some early days of like digital cameras and still film cameras quite a bit, video cameras and so forth, I remember I would go onto CompuServe to the Jerry Gets Her Done chat channel on CompuServe, where Jerry would tell you all about how to set up your photography equipment. Jerry over at Jerry Gets Her Done was super helpful. And I remember way back in the deepest corners of the internet. You old enough to remember Usenet? There was alt.microphone fetish, where people would chat on Usenet, and there was this dude who went by the handle Greetings Earthlings. That's all we knew him by. But he would talk about his huge microphone fetish all the time and about how someday, improvised pop punk songs would make him literally hundreds of dollars. He was foreseeing the future and forecasting the future. But back then, he'd just post these 16-bit uncompressed wave files of a pop punk song about microphones and pizza delivery, and I swear it would use like half your monthly internet time allotment just to download these things. But it was so cool. It was so cool. And I remember back then trying my hand at talking about gear. And I was very green, really untrained. But I would, talk about gear when I had and I wanted to make videos. So when I bought my first CAD microphone, I wanted to make a video about the cool CAD microphones I had.
I'm gonna be down in a minute. Come on, Mom. I'm trying to make a video. I gotta do it over now. What's up, everybody? It's Microphone Addict Dude, and we're going to talk about a couple of new microphones that I got for doing my voiceovers. I'm going to learn how to do some voiceovers, and yeah, I'm excited about it. I got two of them. And we're going to talk about everything that I know about these microphones, which ain't much yet, but we're going to do it, okay, bros? All right, here we go. Let's check these out. Yo, check it. This is the new. It's like brand new, bro. This is the CAD Conneaut audio devices. You see that? Conneaut audio devices. This is the E100. This is a super cardioid, I think, microphone. It's got switches and junk on it. Check that out. You can turn it on and off. Oh crap, I left it on. It's got whatever that is there. And that one, I think you can turn it down. Look at this. This is so cool, bros. Yeah, I was checking out the new Nickelback record. You guys hear that recently? Man, that's good. That's like an instant classic, bros. So anyway, yeah, that's the CAD E100, and then I also got, in case I need it, this is the CAD E350. Man, this thing's like a barbell. Hey, look at that microphone. Yeah, this is a CAD. Oh, it's upside down. Hold on for a sec. Yeah. This is the E3, you can't see it. It's the E350, but it's got, look at all those switches, bros. Look at that. It's got all sorts of stuff. It's cool. Look, it's like shiny. I dented it. Yeah, that was me. I was drunk. I dented it. That was my bad. That's my bad. It still works though, bros. Still works. I was drinking. Yeah, sorry. Ma, I'll be down. God. Yeah. Anyway, check it out, bros.
Those were the good old days. And I still have my CAD microphones from back then. I have the original CAD E100 and I have my CAD E350. This was pretty esoteric stuff back then. And then in the early 2000s, CAD updated the Equitech line to its second generation. This was called the 2 line, or maybe the squared line. But you still had to dig around to find reviews because this was still before the YouTube days. There was really, other than like text, there wasn't a lot of video unless you knew where to go looking. And you were still hunting for stuff. But at that time, I was getting really into setting up my own vocal booth. And I remember feeling at that time how international the internet was, how small the world felt. Because I remember watching this chap back then from England who made these insane things in his bedroom. It was on his GeoCities page. Tripod I think it was his GeoCities page, but it was called Perky DIY. And he made like an entire home recording studio, literally out of like bits of wire and old towels he got from Asda. It was amazing. And then for cameras, I remember that there was always Bad Boy Buck's MySpace page. Remember MySpace? Where he would post his misadventures and included a lot of sound and video. I learned so much from those guys back then. I also remember I stumbled upon a boom operator who was like totally just giving away trade secrets over on a listserv. And these were like super inside. I snuck my way into that listserv and I got a lot of great information. And there I was back in my bedroom trying to make reviews of the CAD E100 and the CAD E300 at that time. And I took a plunge. I bought them both and I wanted to share.
What's up, bros? What's up, Mike Madman? It's Mike D, and yeah, we got some new microphones to talk about. These are the new, man, it's 2003, we got new microphones. 2000. Oh, by the way, did you hear that new Metallica record? It's Saint Anger, man. Lars's snare sound, that's forever, man. That stuff, that's amazing. I love that new tone. I hope he sticks with it forever. Anyway, we got a couple mics in my bedroom here today. This is the new, look at this, man, bro. That's the CAD E100 check it out. E100 metal. That's the E100. That's so cool. Come on, focus. Man, these cameras ain't work for nothing. Look at this. I also got the CAD E100 or it's E300. Look at that. That's a big fat mic. Oh, it's fat. Look at that. We've got buttons. Yeah, look at that. I got like an EQ filter and numbers. And look at that lightning bolt. That's so metal. Lightning bolt on that microphone is so metal. Metal, bro. Check it out. We're gonna make good voiceovers with these. Yeah, it's gonna be sweet. It's gonna be sweet, bro. It's gonna be sweet, bro. What, Mom? Stop it, bros.
But then, finally, just as YouTube was sort of coming into its own, CAD released the third generation, the E100S and the E300S in the Equitech line. And I knew at that point, my old look, I had to change up my look. If I wanted to progress with the times, I would need to change it up. So I worked on my accent. I worked on my diction, shaved the beard, and I just changed up my look. In retrospect, yeah, I was just copying other reviews out there. Take a look.
Hi, my name's Mike Delgadio, and I really like this microphone. What's happening, booth junkies? Mike Delgadio here, back with another video on home studio setup for voiceover. Today I am reviewing this guy, the CAD Equitech E100S, which in my eyes is synonymous with...
But now, hey, it's 2022. All that stuff, that's all in the past. What's in front of me, right here? This is potentially the future. For hopefully maybe a decade to come, the future of the Equitech line. Today, we have the CAD Equitech E100SX. You've been listening to it in action, and hopefully you can judge if you like the sound. Now, let's talk some specs. Yeah, it's got buttons and switches, just like all the CAD E100s do. It's got the 10 dB pad, where if you need to rock out, it can pad down for the really loud sources, and it's got a high-pass filter to tame the proximity effect. Or you can roll off rumble, or you can just leave them flat, which is what I typically do. And also, the big change that's here from past generations is this generation of microphone does not take any batteries. Some of the older generations, the E100 and the E100 those required internal batteries. This one, no batteries. That's handy. The pattern is still super cardioid, like all the previous generations. And that pattern that's one of the things that attracted me to the E100 line all those years ago. It can be just a little bit more forgiving of the room that you're in. If your acoustic treatment is not up to snuff yet, this mic will help you a bit by focusing the sound. As you improve your booth, this mic will continue to sound good, so it will let you sort of grow with your booth. This microphone can help support you through many iterations of booths. So let's talk specifications. This microphone is, as we said, the fourth generation of the microphone. The most immediate predecessor of this microphone was the E100S. And that was one of my favorite microphones. You guys know, if you've watched my channel, I really like that microphone so much so that Bandrew made fun of me over on podcast about it. But the specifications for the SX, they're all different. It's a new mic. It's its own thing. And we're going to decide if we like the sound of this microphone. But I do think it helps to compare. So many people were still looking for that E100S. I think it helps to talk about the specifications of this, and then we'll do sound comparisons. We'll do a sound comparison to a whole bunch of microphones. We'll compare this one so you can get a sense of sort of where it's placed and decide if this is the tone that's right for you. Because that's all we're trying to do here. So specification-wise, the first thing that you notice about this microphone is it is darker. The E100S had a presence boost up around 5,000 hertz and above. Bright microphone. The SX is a darker microphone. They actually attenuate some of the high frequencies. There's no real boost. Everything is perhaps a bit attenuated. Now that can be both good or bad, depending on what you're looking for in a mic. If you're looking for something that's very present, very bright, like a TLM 103 from Neumann, a very bright microphone, this ain't it. If you're interested in a microphone that's a bit darker to tame your S sounds, to reduce any sibilance, for example, perhaps the SX has a tone that's right for you. I do think that this is a little bit different in the trend compared to many other microphones. Almost every microphone we talk about has this brightness, this presence boost, whereas the SX is a bit darker. And darker mics can flatter many voices. So that's the first thing you notice. From the frequency response, it's a darker microphone. It's doesn't have as much boost in the treble. The high pass is different. It was previously an 80 hertz high pass. They've changed it to 100 hertz high pass. The frequency response, the E100S said it was from less than 40 hertz up to 18,000 hertz. This is 20 hertz up to 18,000 hertz. It doesn't really show really any significant difference in the frequency response graph, so we're going to call those similar enough. The maximum sound pressure level, these are different capsules from the previous generation to the current generation. This one says 136 dB with the pad engaged. So it's not going to be, you can't get quite as loud in front of it. 136 decibels is still plenty loud. We have lots of microphones that we've reviewed that have an SPL that's similar to that, but know that you can't go quite as loud in front of this microphone. The self-noise has changed significantly. The CAD E100S, even though there were some quality control issues and there were some mics that were noisier than others, they claimed that if you had like the perfect one, it had a self-noise of like 3.7 dB as I look at it here, 3.7 dBA as I see in the spec sheet. That's extraordinarily quiet. It may not be quite that low, but it was a really, really quiet microphone. It's now 9.5 dBA, which is still really exceptional noise floor. Not something that you're going to hear. There should be no audible noise in the microphone. There's certainly none that I detect. Other things, it pretty much, a lot of the other stuff is similar. It's a condenser. It's a supercardioid pattern. It's got a 10 dB pad for both of them. So that sort of stuff, it's the same. But performance-wise, tone-wise, you'll hear that they're very different microphones. So those are the specifications for it. And now I've given you a good long example of how this microphone sounds. So why don't we now compare it to a bunch of different microphones? We'll do a bunch of different price points. I'll just grab a whole bunch of microphones and we'll see how it compares. All right, let's get started. Okay, first up, we've got the original CAD E100. So this is a microphone from the mid-90s. I'm not sure exactly what year this one was made, but it was between like 1993 and 1990, probably 5 or 6. So this is one of the real originals, and this is the brand new one. And so what I want to do is first start with a side-by-side comparison. I'll vamp for a minute or so, and just give you a sense of what the sound difference is. So generationally, how this microphone has changed. The big thing about the original CAD E100 is it did require batteries. Inside there are 2 NiCad batteries that get charged by the phantom power. So this microphone could run for about 8 hours connected to just a regular old interface that did not supply phantom power. This could supply its own phantom power for about 8 hours and then get recharged over phantom power later. I don't know of a situation when you might need to do that, but CAD originally said that the microphone had a higher power requirement than the 48 volts could just supply on its own. So it used the battery for additional power. And so now the SX, the new version, technology has changed quite a bit in the past 30 years. So that's not required now. But this is the otherwise generationally form factor. They are very, very similar. Really, the stuff that's changed from the outside appearance is the shape of the basket itself. The E100 is flat. The E100SX has sort of a bowed out appearance. But otherwise, you'll hear the difference. You can tell that they're ancestors. Otherwise, that's it. I just want you to hear the difference between the two. All right, next we'll move on to the 2 version of the CAD E100, so the second generation. Let's see how that sounds. Okay, now we've got the CAD E100 2. So now we've got the second generation of the CAD E100, the Equitech 100 line. And this one also continued to take batteries. They did change the basket ever so slightly. It does bow out a little bit more. The capsule suspension is a little bit different. As far as I know, each generation, I think, had a different capsule. This one still had the E102 still had the on-off switch. There are batteries in there that you change probably after a decade or so, but that is to supply the additional power that the microphone needed in order to work. My experience is, though, I've always just run it regular with phantom power, and it's always just worked. So I don't know how much the reliance on the batteries was if you were supplying phantom power, but there are batteries in there, which is a little tiny bit inconvenient because you have to open the microphone, you have to unscrew parts and put new batteries in it. But then I think this is the last generation where that was the case. As we move on to the next generation, the E100S, that is no longer the case. And now we'll move on to the next generation, the E100S. Let's see how that one works. All right, and now we have the CAD E100S. And I think from a packaging perspective, the CAD E100S was the absolute pinnacle of the CAD line. Look at this. It comes in this nice box. I love this box. But this was the box from the E100S. The E100SX, a little bit more budget from a packaging perspective. The E100SX just comes in a cardboard box. It's a nice cardboard box. It'll last, but it's a cardboard box. But it's got a foam insert, and you'll be able to use it for a fairly long time. It's just not quite as pretty as the other one. But this is where I learned about the lineage of this microphone. It's actually got a picture of all 4 of them and the dates that they were there. So the E100S, it says it ran from 2007 to 2020. I actually thought it was a year later than that. I thought it ran until 2021, but they may have actually stopped manufacturing in 2020. But that's the E100S. This one, they did away with the on-off switch in the E100S. So I think they eliminated the batteries. But I do believe that the capsule has changed from one to the next. I think the SX has a different capsule. Also, I mentioned this in my first impressions video. The switch locations were reversed. So the pad and the high pass filters, they switched the location. So definitely the circuitry in here, from everything that I can tell, they're just different microphones. For whatever that means, they're different microphones. They share a lot, but they do have some pretty significant differences. And I think the tone difference is one that you can really make out here. The E100S, smooth mic, brighter mic. The E100SX, still a smooth mic, but it's a bit darker. Those highs, while it's still clear, they're not quite as prominent as they are. Just a darker versus a brighter mic. So they made some tonal changes to the mic in this generation. So you might like the way that sounds better. It might be more flattering for your voice, but it's the choice that they made in the frequency sort of response graph. So I just wanted you to hear the difference. So now you've heard every single generation of the CAD E100. Let's do some other microphones. Maybe some of the other microphones that you've seen already, and then a bunch of. We'll just keep going till I run out of mics. We'll just keep going. Cool. Okay. Hi over there. What you're hearing now, this is the CAD, this is the SX, and this is that microphone that you saw in one of my old vintage videos. This is the CAD E350, and this is another microphone from the 90s. And it's like this because this is right side up. It's actually supposed to be suspended. But this is the right side up orientation for this microphone, and I'm trying to get the capsules as even as I can. But this one is, to my recollection, and I don't have an E300 from the 90s. This is the E350. I think there were 2 different versions. One was made overseas, the E350, and then one was made in the U.S., which is the E300. I think that's correct. But the E350 is sort of known for being a really good vocal microphone, and it's meant to be suspended like this. But I figured, since I don't think this has ever made an appearance on my channel, because it's hard to work with. It doesn't really work on camera. I'd have to really use it upside down, more in its regular orientation. But I do like the microphone. I do like the way it sounds. So I thought I would share with you the current version. So there's 25 years difference between these 2 microphones, the SX and the E350. Now the E350 has buttons and switches. It's a multi-pattern microphone. It has high pass filter. It's got internal batteries like all the other Equitech line, and it does have a high-pass filter, it does have padding, and it is multi-pattern. So I'm looking at it here. It's got the figure 8 cardioid omnidirectional, similar to what you might find on like a Neumann U87. So anyway, at any rate, this is the CAD E350 microphone. So if you ever wanted to hear what a vintage, really well-liked microphone, but a rare microphone, this is one compared to its modern counterpart, the E350. There you go. All right, let's do it. This is expensive. This will probably, if you find this now, it's probably going to run you anywhere between like $700 and $1,200. It's going to fluctuate all over the place, depending on if there's more than one on the market at the time may have influenced the price. But my experience, when these do come up, on the rare occasion that they come up, this will set you back about $1,000, give or take. Okay, next up we have this one here. This is the CAD E300S, another one that you saw. But this was like the step-up counterpart to the E100. The E100 was a single pattern microphone, super cardioid pattern microphone that was really, I think, designed for, I don't know, maybe vocals. I know it's known for like for being a voiceover microphone, whereas the E300 series was more of a multi-pattern, sort of a bit more versatile. And I think that the E300s, they never really got popularity, even though CAD would position it as a premium step up from the E100. I think its primary drawback was its size. It's a big, it's a big microphone. I don't know why it needs to be so big. I've never taken one apart, but it's a big microphone. It's a bottle style microphone. They just put a huge grill around the capsule. But if you've ever seen a bottle style where the capsule just sort of sits on a little tiny neck, that's what's hiding under this capsule. But this, again, like the 350 that we just saw, this is a multi-pattern microphone, figure 8, cardioid, omnidirectional, also has a high-pass filter, also has a pad filter, also does have an on-off switch. So, a feature-rich microphone that they would have positioned as being above the E100. But these are readily available. You can still find E300Ss. So if you're having difficulty finding an E100S, you can still find the E300Ss, at least at the moment. I don't know how long that will last, at about the same price point as the E100SX. So if you prefer the tone difference between the two, if you're looking for something, I think these are about on parity price-wise, about $300. You should be able to find one of these. I certainly prefer the form factor of the E100SX compared to the E300. It's a big fat microphone, but once you get it positioned in place, as long as you can see your copy, not a big deal. But I did want you to see, since I showed it in one of the earlier segments. This is actually, I don't think this one actually made an appearance in that video. And I don't think this microphone has actually ever been seen on this channel before, now that I think about it. I don't think this microphone's ever appeared on the channel. At any rate, this is the CAD E300S, discontinued, and I don't know if the 300 series is coming back. It just sort of quietly disappeared from the CAD website, and they don't have a coming soon for it. So I don't know. I have no knowledge of what's going to happen with the E300 series. At any rate, so these are still available. So if you like the way these sound, you can still find these. You can find them out in the world. So if you like the way it sounds, go get them before they disappear. All right, so that's the E300 compared to the E1. All right, so we got a few more CAD microphones, and then we're gonna just keep going around the world. All right, let's get the next one in place. Okie dokie. What we have here now, this is the CAD E50, sort of the junior version of the E100S. Now, the E50 is sort of an interesting cat. This microphone, to my knowledge, is what you might call a white label microphone. In other words, it's made by somebody else and gets the CAD badge in whatever incarnation this is. So there have been cars like that, right? There was the Mitsubishi, the Eagle Talon and the Mitsubishi Eclipse were the same car. The Mitsubishi GT3000 and the Dodge Stealth were the same car. Like the GMCs and the Chevys, they have a lot of crossover. This is a microphone that's made by somebody else and gets a CAD badge. This is the E50, and I think it's about $150. I know that that's the case because I have another microphone that was sent to me by somebody else that's this exact same microphone, form factor and everything, the exact same microphone. But it doesn't, it's same price and everything, but it doesn't have a CAD badge on it. So CAD is outsourcing this one from some factory in China that just puts the CAD sticker on it. So the other one was like the Adorama house brand. The Adorama house brand, I think, is not available anymore, but this is still available on the CAD website, but about $150. Cardioid microphone, just sort of entry level, but it does have the E designation. But either way, it's just sort of a budget microphone. If you like the way it sounds, and there's nothing wrong with that, it just doesn't have the same sort of heritage and lineage as the 300 and the 100 series. This E50, it's a new entry into the E line of microphones. But I thought I'd just give you a comparison. This is about half the price of the E100SX. So side by side, comparison-wise, you can see which one you like if you like the tone of one compared to the other. There you go. So that's the E50. Got a whole bunch of microphones down here. I think this is the last of the CAD microphones I'm going to bring into this review. But this one is one that has made an appearance a number of times on the channel. This is the CAD M179. What's interesting about the M179 is it has the same high-pass filters. It's got a high-pass filter switch and a padding switch like the E100SX. But this is, not only is it a multi-pattern microphone like the E300 and 350 that you saw, this one has even more patterns. This is what you call an infinitely adjustable pattern at $179. So this has all of the patterns. And the patterns of microphones, they really run along a spectrum. So there's from the omnidirectional, where it's the same sensitivity all the way around, to being very directional, so it can only hear from the front and back and not hear from the sides, and sort of all the ranges in between. That's called a figure of 8. But then, so I have this one set on the super cardioid pattern, matching the super cardioid pattern of the E100SX. But this one does have them all. So this can be a cardioid pattern. This can be any of the different patterns. And this one actually, the M179 has some heritage to it. I think it was originally, when it first came out, there was like I think it was a round badge CAD, which meant it was made in the United States. And then I think at some point in its history, the manufacturing of it went overseas, and it gets it gets a different badge. But this is what they call an M line. It's not part of the Equitech line, but I do think that some of the guts in the generation when this was released, I think some of the componentry, maybe the same capsule. I don't actually know. That might be wrong, but I do think that they did share some. Actually, I think this capsule and the E300's capsule were the same. I think they shared some componentry, but the M179 spec'd down a little bit. They made it multi-pattern. It is a little bit different, but this is about $179, $180, I think, compared to the $300 of the E100SX. But now you get a chance to hear the difference between these two microphones. And now you've heard not every CAD microphone I have, but a certain, I think there's only like one or two others that I don't have. But you've heard a sufficiency. The other two are, I think the other one is the E100, the E302, which is like impossible to get. And I think that might be all. Yeah, I've only got one other CAD microphone, but you've heard enough CAD microphones to at least get a sense of where this appears in the CAD lineage. But now let's compare it to a number of other microphones that are available on the market, so you can see if this has the tone that you think is right for you. You're going to hear it's going to sound different than a bunch of the other mics. And I think it's going to be on the darker side, and that might be just right for you. So let's move out of the CAD world, and let's move into some other microphones. All right, let's go. All right. Cool. Next, we have the neat King Bee B2 cardioid condenser microphone. So the Neat King B2 is pretty new in the market. I think it's been available for about 4 months at the time I'm making this video, maybe 6 months, but it's relatively new, and it's the successor to the King B1. But I was really impressed with this microphone when I made a review of it not too long ago, as a microphone that sort of punches above its weight at about $179. I think it's pretty close in price to the CAD M179. The King B is a big fat microphone. It's sort of dimensionally similar to that E300 that we saw before, but without the grill. You see how it's got this, I call this a bottle style, for lack of a better word, where it's got this little tiny neck and the capsule above it. It's sort of what the E300 looked like under its grill. This is a common form factor that you see in microphones, where the capsule just sort of sits on this little tiny neck. But this is just another example of another microphone that's popular on the market right now, relatively new, and one that you might be making a consideration between the E100SX. Yeah, I totally said that wrong, didn't I? The E100SX and the Neat King B2. So now you get a chance to hear these two together to see where this E100SX fits. So this is the Neat King B2. Next up, we've got the Audio-Technica AT 2020. This microphone is about 1/3 the cost of the E100SX. But the Audio-Technica 2020, it's a fine microphone for something like YouTube. I don't love it for voiceover because I think it's a little bit too noisy. There's an underlying noise, generally speaking, at least in my AT 2020. Call it a budget mic, call it its entry level. Maybe that's why it is. But the AT 2020, it's a popular microphone. You see a lot of people on YouTube doing it. If you're doing YouTube where there's a music bed with your voice, then the AT 2020 is going to be fine. But if you're doing critical recordings where it's just your voice sitting naked and alone, like many of us in voiceover, audiobook creation, long-form narration, that sort of thing, you need a microphone that's quiet. But I wanted you to at least hear the difference between these two so that you could make a judgment call. But either way, that's the Audio-Technica AT 2020 cardioid condenser microphone. Next up, we've got the Lewitt LCT 440 Pure. And this microphone, very popular for voiceover. Cardioid condenser microphone, no buttons, no switches, just plain old microphone. But the Lewitt microphones, I really like the way they sound. This is probably going to sound different between the two as we switch back and forth between the two. I expect you're going to hear this at the same time. I haven't done this shootout except to make this video, but you may find that there's a pretty big sound difference between these two, is my guess, where this one's going to be darker and this one's going to be brighter. The Lewitts tend to be brighter, clear microphones, but they're both really good microphones. And so there's the LCT 440 Pure and the CAD E100SX. And you'll be able to just get a sense of the back and forth between them to see if one you think would be more preferable for your voice. Here's some considerations that you might make in making this kind of selection. Think about your S sound and the brightness of your voice. If you think you need to brighten up your voice, then you might choose something like the Lewitt. If your voice is already bright, has a lot of treble or sibilance, or if you listen to your S sound and that S has a whistle to it, a bright aspect to your voice, then you might consider a darker mic like the E100SX, just so you can get a different tone. You may find one more preferable to the other, but when we're thinking about these microphones, think about which tone do you like better. It's not really a better microphone at this price point. These are all going to be really similar. You're just going to try and find the tone that resonates with you. And that's where I'm really trying to give you a sense of where this one fits so that you can decide if it's right for you. But there you go. That's the Lewitt LCT 440 Pure. We'll do one more Lewitt microphone. Next up, we've got the Lewitt LCT 540 Subzero. This microphone is a fairly significant step up in price from the E100SX, and I'm going to guess that they don't sound too very similar, but you may find that you like one better. The Lewitt, the 540, is a fairly featureful mic. It's got multiple high-pass filters, it's got multiple pads, and it has a feature in it where you can do a rehearsal performance into the microphone with a certain sequence of buttons pressed, and it will automatically decide if it needs to pad down the microphone. So if you're at risk of clipping or going over the top, being too loud for the microphone, then the Lewitt LCT 540 can actually give you some feedback and say, yeah, you're going to have to turn this down. You're going to have to gain this mic down a little bit with the pad, and it will set it for you. That's pretty cool. And this is one of my favorite microphones. This was a gift from Lewitt in order to make a review, but it has become one that I've recorded quite a bit with because I've really ended up enjoying it. This is made in Austria. So the Lewitt LCT 540. But I thought it would be an interesting comparison because these are both going to be microphones that I think voice actors will choose. And so I wanted you to give a listen so you can see what the difference is and see if there's one that you think is more right for you or not. So this is the Lewitt LCT 540 Subzero compared to the CAD E100SX. And there you go. Oh, I should say, this is a cardioid pattern and a supercardioid pattern, so slightly different patterns. All right, there we go. We'll do some more microphones, shall we? Oh, I love this. Now we have another microphone that's really popular for voiceover. This is the Rode NT1, not the 1A. This is the regular old NT1. I think there's a price parity between these two. I think these are pretty close in price. But the Rode NT1 is another one that's really popular for voiceover, so I thought it would be natural to see if you like the tone of one versus the other. This is a cardioid pattern, no buttons, no switches. It's just the microphone, and this one does have the other features as we've described. The pattern is different. This is the super cardioid. This is a regular cardioid pattern. So there is a pattern difference between the two. But, as I've mentioned before, once you're in sort of the booth situation, like in here, the pattern for the voice actor really isn't super critical. One will allow you to move a little bit more in front of the microphone, whereas the supercardioid, you tend to need to be a little bit more locked before it starts to change in tonality. But in general, unless you're like wildly gesticulating in front of the microphone, you're going to be sort of in its sweet spot, kind of no matter what you're doing. But I wanted you to have a chance to hear the difference between the Rode NT1, and the E100SX. So there you go. There's the difference between these two microphones. Oh my goodness, I've got so many more. So many more. This is going to be like an hour-long video or something like that. Anyway, so that's the Rode NT1. Let's keep going, shall we? Yay! Next up, we have the TechZone Audio Sellar X2. We're going to have 3 from TechZone, so we're going to move through these pretty quickly. But this is the Sellar X2. Really popular microphone, not terribly expensive. I think it's about $100 less than the... This price fluctuates quite a bit depending on what day it is. But the TechZone Audio, the Sellar X2, has been a very popular microphone. It's gotten a lot of popularity in the past couple of years for voice actors. So I wanted to have a comparison so that you could hear the X2 compared to the E100SX. I got to get that into my mouth. That E100SX. I'll get the hang of it. But I've been saying E100S for years. So this is the E100SX. So I got to get the hang of that. But the Sellar X2 has been one that's been quite popular. I had a really early version of this, and I've been really happy with this microphone. I've done a number of recordings with it, and it's a really good performing microphone. But you should hear that there's going to be some tone difference. I'm reckoning that there's going to be some tone difference between the two. This is the brightest. I believe this to be the brightest of the TechZone Audio microphones, at least of the ones that I have. I have 2 more that are labeled as vintage, and I think they're going to have a slightly darker tone, so you'll be able to hear how that compares to the slightly darker E100SX. But this has been the TechZone Audio Sellar X2 cardioid condenser microphone. Now you've heard the comparison. Let's move on. Now I've got the next TechZone Audio Sellar X2. This is the X2 Vintage. And so they'll say that this is, the folks at Texone Audio would say that the Sellar X2 Vintage is a bit darker. So there may be less of a difference between these two. You're going to hear at the same time I am. But this one should be a slightly darker microphone compared to the X2 that we just had. And we'll see how this compares. I have no idea what the price point of this is at the moment. I'll have links in the description to all of the microphones, so if you want to do a price comparison, you'll be able to do that. But this is the X2 Vintage. I think it's a bit more expensive. To my recollection, it's a bit more expensive than the X2. But I don't remember. It's $50 maybe. It doesn't. Like I said, these prices fluctuate. But I wanted you to hear the difference between, because this is another one of the microphones that is maybe a bit on the darker side. So you'll be able to hear if there's a difference between it, that if you like the tone of one compared to the other. This again is a cardioid pattern microphone as opposed to the super cardioid. And this one has no buttons or switches. There's no pad, no high pass or anything like that. And I'll say that quite frequently, but that really doesn't. It's just a choice the manufacturer makes. I rarely use any buttons or switches on the microphones. It's very rare that I do that. I typically will do that in post. As they say, I'll change the EQ to remove some of those bass frequencies if I need to. So I don't typically do that when I'm recording, at least not here in my booth. But I want you to hear the difference between these two. Sorry if there's any plosives. Sorry about that. But this has been the Sellar X2 Vintage. Let's do one more from Texone Audio, shall we? Let's do the X3. Next up, we've got what I think is probably the closest comparison microphone-wise of any of the ones that we're going to test. This is the Sellar X3 from Texone Audio compared to the CAD E100SX. And the reason I say that is, one, these are really close in price, about $350 and $300, I think. I think they're pretty close in price. This is a cardioid pattern microphone as opposed to the super cardioid pattern, but they also have the similar buttons and switches. Got the high pass filter. It's got the pad filter. This one also is a bit, I think they say it's a bit darker. I remember when I was talking to Texone Audio about this one, they said they were saying that this is a darker microphone, at least of their microphone line. So, at any rate, these are two microphones that may be a bit on the similar sounding side, at least similar from a darker perspective, maybe not quite as present. And so these may be two microphones that are on your radar if you're making a choice. So I thought I'd give you a chance to hear both of them next to each other to see if you prefer the sound of one to the other, but hopefully to help you make a decision. So this has been the Texone Audio Sellar X3 compared to the CAD Audio E100SX. There we go. Seems to be a bit of a theme during this video with the sort of more rectangular form factor microphones. That's with the Lewitts and all the different Equitech microphones. This one is the Austrian Audio OC18 cardioid condenser microphone. Again, with the buttons and the switches on the front, similar. But this one, the OC18 has really made a splash. I think a lot in voiceover over the past couple of years. The OC18 comes out of Austria, and it's considerably more expensive. It's almost 3 times as expensive as the E100SX at $800-ish, if my recollection serves. Again, links in the description if you want to go check prices on any of these. But I've recorded a lot with the OC18 over the past year. Very smooth. I think that this is also a very smooth sounding microphone, so there may be some worthy comparison to see if this one punches up to where the OC18 punches. So it's just another sort of point of comparison. The one thing I will definitely note between the two is the OC18 for me, at least my particular one, is a much quieter mic. It's not very hot. You have to add a lot more gain to it, which can sometimes, if you've got preamplifier noise, that can sometimes add more noise. Whereas the E100SX, my experience is this is quite a hot mic. So there's a lot of signal that comes out of it, which means you can turn your preamp down quite a bit. Sorry, it's easy to make plosives. Gosh, I'm so sorry. But the E100SX is a really hot mic. It's got a lot of juice that comes out of it, as opposed to the Austrian Audio OC18, which is not a particularly hot mic. I have to turn the gain up pretty high. Luckily, on my Audient preamps, they're not noisy. They're not noisy at all. But I have to add quite a bit of gain to the OC18 in order to get it up to the same signal level as the E100SX. But anyway, I wanted you to hear a comparison between these two because voice actors may be considering both of these to add to their locker. So there you go. Now I've got my Neumann TLM 103 next to the CAD E100S. It's a smaller microphone, so I had to adjust the E100S a little bit. But these two, hugely different in price, and probably pretty different in sound characteristics too, right? The TLM 103 is known for being like really a bright and clear microphone. It's known for being really presence boosted. Gives it a good muscular, modern sound. Whereas the E100SX, I would, as we've said before, generally describe it as dark. Bright, dark. That's how I would describe, and I think other people would describe these microphones. So you might really like the Neumann sound. You might really like the CAD sound. It's just preference at this point. The TLM 103, very popular for voiceover, but it's also a fairly divisive mic. Some people really like that brightness. Some people really don't like that brightness. For me, I bought this mic. I've been very happy with this microphone, but it's a bright mic. It's definitely a bright mic. So as we go back and forth, you can decide if you like, as we've said, if you like one better than the other. The TLM 103 is a cardioid pattern. There's no buttons. There's no switches on it. Like I said, it's over $1,000. I think depending on the day of the week, it might be as much as $1,200 at times. But again, super popular. You know, I think often you're paying the Neumann tax on it. There's been a number of microphones along the way that we've heard that, for me, have just as preferable a sound as the TLM 103, but that Neumann name does carry a little bit of a tax to it. There's a price for it, but you also get to say, I use a Neumann, right? There's a reputation that those microphones have that, I don't know, maybe give you some credibility. I don't know. Depends on who you're talking to, I suppose. But anyway, I wanted to vamp long enough so that you get a good chance to hear these two microphones side by side, hear the differences in sound characteristics, and see if you have a preference for the way one sounds compared to the other. This has been the Neumann TLM 103. Let's move on. Next up, it should surprise absolutely no one that the next mic that is put in front of you is the Neumann U87. If we're going to stay with a Neumann, let's stay in the Neumann world. I've got two Neumann microphones. This is the second of the two. This is the Neumann U87 Ai, the current version of the Neumann U87. And to me, the Neumann U87 sounds different from the TLM 103. And I'm going to guess it sounds different from the E100SX. This microphone, hyper expensive, 10 times more expensive than the E100. This will run you, what is it, like $3,600 right now? $3,600 for this microphone. It's got a reputation. It's got a reputation that I think is well-earned and well-deserved. This is a perennial favorite. The Neumann U87 has been a favorite in its generations for 50 years, if not longer. Yeah, I'd say at least 50 years, probably 60 years. I don't know when the first U87 came out. But yeah, 50, 60 years anyway. I think that they were, was it the 60s? Somebody will let me know in the comments when the first U87s were made, because I don't actually know that. But, so here we go. This is the current version. This is a modern microphone. To me, it's a little flatter, a little bit more neutral than the TLM 103, but you'll be able to hear a comparison. And this is like one of those things where you decide, does this one sound 10 times more preferable, better than the $300 microphone? There's going to be people out there that say, yes, absolutely. I can hear the difference. And to me, though, the difference that you get, that costs $3,600. And I can respect that. I bought it, right? I bought this microphone. So clearly I was after that sound too. But under normal circumstances, I saved up for years and years and years and years and years and years and years to get my U87. I didn't start with the U87. And I made lots of money with the previous versions of the E100 as my main microphone. So know that if you are going to sort of aspire up to the more rarefied air of the U87, at least price-wise, know what you're going after. This is a multi-pattern microphone. I have it in the cardioid pattern. It also has the buttons and switches on the back, so the pad and the high-pass filter are on the back of this microphone. This does not have a super cardioid option. This has the omnidirectional, the cardioid, and the figure 8 pattern. And anyway, you've gotten to hear now the Neumann U87 Ai compared to the CAD E100SX. Yeah. All right, let's keep going. Last up, our last microphone is comparison, and I'm not sure quite where to fit this in the comparison, but this is the brand new Lewitt LCT 1040. I have a review about this microphone. It's hard to include this in the mic comparisons because this microphone is configurable enough that it could sound lots of different ways. So it's hard to say, well, you're hearing these two compared because the Lewitt LCT 1040 can sound a lot of different ways. It's a really flexible microphone. So what I thought I would do is, since this is a darker microphone, I thought I would put this one into its dark setting and put it on its tube setting, but mix in a little bit of the solid state setting. See, this is what I mean about this 1040. It's lots of different kinds of microphones. This is both a solid state microphone, like this one. Matter of fact, why don't we start there? I'm going to make this first, the LCT 1040. I'm going to make this sort of an apples to apples. So now we have two solid state versions. This microphone is both a tube and a solid state microphone at once. This is a solid state microphone. So right now I've got the LCT 1040 in sort of its brightest, clearest mode, and it is purely in its solid state mode. So there's a tube inside this microphone, but right now the tube is essentially bypassed. But I can add in a little bit of additional tone. I can activate the tube inside the microphone and set the responsiveness of that tube as either clear or warm or dark. I can change that a little bit. So you're hearing this first as its solid state, hearing them compared to see how the E100SX compares to another really expensive microphone. This is $3,600, not too different from that Neumann that just went by. But this is in the clearest. I say the clearest mode. But if I switch it over now, I'll just turn a knob and let the microphone reconfigure itself for a second. I've now got this over in its dark mode. So this will make it dark in perhaps a similar way to the E100SX. I don't know. But I wanted you to hear like really rarefied air, like super expensive. We've had a couple of super expensive microphones in the booth now, and I want you to hear how the E100SX compares. You've heard it now. How does it compare? Does this seem like it can compare to a microphone 10 times its cost? Maybe. I'll let you decide. Does it sound close? Does it sound 90% of the way there, or 50% of the way there, or 30% of the way there, or 10% of the way there? My guess is this is going to sound pretty good. Sorry, plosive, I think. It's going to sound pretty good by comparison, but you don't necessarily need to spend $3,000 or more on a microphone when in a booth like this, you might be perfectly fine with a $300 microphone that's dedicated to one thing, and that is reproducing your voice. Anyway, I've tried to give you a really good representation of where this microphone fits in the current range of microphones, and also where this microphone fits in the history of its own lineage. Was I even remotely successful? I don't know. That's for you to decide. But hopefully you enjoyed this video. I really appreciate it. If you made it all the way to this point, you're a star. You're a star. I really appreciate it. But that's all I got for you today. Holy cow. I've been really excited to get my hands on this E100SX. I've been so excited to get my hands on this. I've been such a fan of the E100S for so long. I was a fan of the E100 for so long. These microphones have been very good to me, and I'm really glad that CAD has made another one. Whether you like it or not, that's for you to decide. There are different mics for different voices, and I can respect that. But I've been really excited and really grateful that CAD sent this over to me so that I could share it with you. I hope that helps. I hope that helps. But that's all I have for you today. Now, go get yourself a microphone. Any microphone. Maybe a little rectangular supercardioid deal. But get yourself a microphone so that you can get into the booth and you can record something amazing. Thanks. We'll talk to you next time. Take care.